What's up, gang? Life22 here. It's Kevin. And I've got Paulie. We never heard a name for you. Oh, Paulie the good husband. The good husband. Yeah, there we go. Paulie the good husband. It's been a while since we've done a news over beers. I'm on a sabbatical, but I luckily have a storage case of Old Mill, so Paulie cracked into that. And tonight we're going to be reviewing last night's council meeting. And we're going to talk about local politics and bullshit, like the fact that the most amazing thing happened yesterday is Governor Cuomo resigned or is planning to resign in 2 weeks. I don't know why he needs 2 week notice. And then as of the next meeting, you probably won't see this mustache because I'm getting fed up with it. So when I take a shower tonight, it's going to be gone. And I'm still growing my Joe Exotic. So, but this thing is becoming annoying too because I look like a caveman. Not that Paul looks any better. Paul looks like a big toe with hair on it.
That's right.
So we're starting the council meeting off. I think they start with the committee of the whole, and it's just really, I don't know, it's so they start out and the committee of the whole is this is kind of arbitrary. Oh, how do you? Oh, that's cool. Oh, I bet you that skips video. That's dumb. That's super dumb. Okay, well, we're doing this on my phone, which is a little dumb, as you can tell. So there's an applicant for a downtown business has applied for a revolving loan fund, which they do that for businesses, and I believe they have the first time home buyer loan, which allows with people to have a portion of their home loan going to the city at a lower interest rate typically than a bank. And you have to pay it back, and so, there's older versions of it, newer versions, and it's the older version you didn't have to pay it back on your home, but there was always a lien on the house, so if you ever sold it, you had to pay it back, unless you own the home for over 30 years or something. And then every year after that, they yeah, so that's kind of it.
Is it like a federal program, or is it actually state-run?
We take, so the Community Development Office takes grant funding that they acquire from state and feds, and then they will initiate the program. So essentially, and then they pay it back, and then what happens is that we're supposed to keep that loan rolling. Obviously, as people, you know what I mean, as people are paying them back, you have to build so you can keep lending every year, and then you expect the payments to come in and continue to rebuild the fund. But every year, I'm sure they apply for additional funding to just kind of keep it topped off, so they can help out more and more people. And they have so many funds every year, and then obviously, then at the end of it, I think we have to repay it to the state if we were to ever stop the program. And so that's also what this stupid wire is us listening to the council meeting on my phone because, this ain't Joe Rogan.
If somebody wanted to apply, who would they go about? Would it be through the city itself?
Yeah, you call the city and you reach out to community development.
Okay.
So the coordinator over there or her cleric can help you guys. That's it's kind of a cool little program. So right now they're discussing a local business borrowing. There's this way I can adjust the volume on it. So the loan is for a downtown building. I think they're borrowing $30,000, and the council goes through and they approve it, which will behoove us later in our discussion. So we're going to skim on through here. That's pretty. So yeah, windows, electrical work. This is boring, huh? Okay, so they're moving funds. Man, I'm glad we're not watching this side by side on the screen because people would be bored at home. So this is a pretty boring council meeting in terms of the reason I wanted to do this, Paul, and talk about local politics is to start by dissecting it.
Sure.
So yeah, they're just doing some housework, some paperwork, just minor like housekeeping stuff with their paperwork, and that's the boring side. You know what I mean? The most interesting news so far was the grant for a building downtown, and what piqued my interest yesterday when I listened to this before my other podcast was the fact that the council took a brunt of abuse from some public commenters, and that's really where the meat and potatoes is, because even after that there was a bunch of like resolutions, like it moves this. So for those who don't know, that like the revolving loan fund application gets approved here in the committee of the whole and referred to the regular meeting, which will follow the committee of the whole meeting, and then in that meeting they do their regular business stuff, the housekeeping stuff, the pledge, the roll call. They discuss finance and bills. They'll ask the mayor if he has any, business to attend to or deal with, or announcements he'd like to make. A lot of times that's where he peppers in his proclamations. And then what happens after that? They talk about upcoming legislations and where they got referred to by the council president, and then they move into finance and bills, and then they move into resolutions. And before finance and bills, before resolutions, is the public comment window, and that's where usually like it's either very dull, there's nobody there at all, doesn't want to say anything, or they don't, or they really, see, they're about to adjourn this. Yeah, that was it. They had 2 items on the docket.
Okay. And so they do this, and then they vote on it after the comment section, basically?
After the comment, like, that's if you want to comment about something that day, or maybe you just want to continue to bitch about roundabouts, like, that's typically what happens. People just come up there and, like, I hate the roundabouts, or what about these new
Or the street sweeper. Oh, I can't believe they got me.
No, there was a guy who screamed about the street sweeper and how he has no on-street parking, or he only has on-street parking, and was just enraged a couple weeks ago. And so they're doing the roll call, then they'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. Oh, never mind, sorry. Invocation, then the Pledge of Allegiance. And this is always something that I always thought was just kind of weird, because, so, and there's a big debate on separation of church and state. I just feel like every time I even offered for like the local rabbi to come speak, or there's a mosque in town to have them come speak, and I always got denied. To have them speak, and so that's when one day I said that Pastafarian speech, because they gave me the opportunity to say it, but it was always something Christian, and typically like Catholic, or like Protestant, right? And it was always like you're limiting it to only Christianity, and then you're limiting it only to those two, and you're really, you know what I mean? Like it didn't have openness. If you're gonna have religion there, then you know what I mean? So that's where my point was. After that, they gave it back to me, and they had an invocation. I did invocations that were invoking governmental speeches, like ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You know what I mean? Invoke the people. So now he reads the previous meeting minutes, and then they're gonna talk to the mayor. They'll tell you who was present at the last council meeting, which isn't helpful. I mean, is helpful. Communications from the mayor. Okay, so the mayor is plugging the job fair, which would have been today. I don't know if it's beyond today, but it was it was today, and the city has a booth there to promote diversity and inclusion. I'm sure most of you guys saw me roll my eyes in that one. You almost don't want to get me started on the diversity and inclusion committee, as well as just what it stands for. I don't know, like it's like the military is diverse. Like the military's always been diverse. Sure. Oh, we didn't have a lot of women Navy SEALs.
Right.
Like there are physical differences between men and women. Like people don't get that, and then all of a sudden you go on to like there's a lot of men that can't do it. That's why like transgender women, which means they're men, biological males, are decimate, like the weakest amongst, like, let's say runners or basketball players or soccer players, or any other, the bottom string, like the back, the replacements, those guys, the ones that are on the bottom string, they go over there and all of a sudden they're beating the top women athletes, and it's an unfair comparison.
Oh yeah, I mean, you just saw a lot of that with the Olympics, where you had people that were biologically born as males, and then they
Competed.
transitioned a few years ago, and all of a sudden they're doing weightlifting, and before they were
Except
amateur, and male amateur weightlifters, and now they're top of the game in the women's division.
well, except for the one weightlifter.
Right.
Did you see that?
No.
The guy was like Johnny Knoxville from The Ringer. Like, he showed up going like, oh, I can do this. I can pretend to be somebody who's handicapped and, you know what I mean, and play in the Special Olympics. That's what this guy did. He goes, he was like out of shape. He was winded all the time, or she, or well, I'm sorry, I'm screwing up pronouns. And so we're getting we're getting a little feedback here. We're getting into they're discussing public announcements, which would be public notices, which are like renewal of liquor licenses, things like that. Every time they need to be renewed or there's a new one coming up, they will write the city, put out an application. The city just makes the announcement, like putting a legal notice in the paper. They're required to do this at any municipality when you get a liquor license in New York State. So now he's referring the resolutions and potential PLs. Discussion items do not get referred. So, yeah, no, I mean, I just thought it was hilarious that this, and then when they asked for comments, like, nobody, like, they were like, what do you think about, what is it, not L. Ron Hubbard, Laurel Hubbard. What do you think about Laurel Hubbard's, what do you think about Laurel Hubbard? And they were like, no comment. Like, they just didn't even want to bring it up, and those were the medal winners because Laurel dropped out. And
right.
So, how did we start on that? We started with talking about the differences between men and women. So Navy SEALs, like, so clearly, like, you know what I mean, like, men are stronger and more physically capable, and I'm not saying that there's not like some rare, you know what I mean. There are like women bodybuilders,
sure,
and they kick my ass. I mean, but that doesn't mean that like. But like Arnold Schwarzenegger and those guys, I don't think they can become Navy SEALs.
No,
like,
I mean, it takes a special kind of almost physique, and it's usually not humongous,
brawn.
Right, it's more just the kind of guys you'd see in like a triathlon, tall, but,
Right, you can run 7 miles on broken legs.
Right.
Like, I don't know if you've ever read David Goggins' book.
No.
What is it? Get Hurt? Get Hard? He likes to say get hard. He's talking about being muscular, nothing sexual. You Can't Hurt Me, or Cant Hurt Me. Cant Hurt Me is the name of his book. Oh, it's an excellent book. I listened to it, and his dad. He grew up in impoverished home, and he tried out. He was overweight, and he tried out for the Navy SEALs like 4 or 5 times. Finally, they were like, "This is your last time, dude. You're gonna miss. You're gonna either have tried too many times, or you're gonna miss the age cutoff." And he made it, but he talked about how each and every time he ran on broken legs. He was running on broken legs, and it was a real inspiring story. And then he got out, and he got into like running just all the time, like doing marathons and like the Tough Mudders and like the death trials and all these ridiculously insane, you have to sign waivers because you will die if you know what I mean, like run like 78 miles, you know what I mean, things
sure,
like that.
And it's not just because he was able to do it because he was male. It's because he worked at it every single day.
Well, yeah,
no.
He talks about that in his book too,
right,
like how he like didn't know certain things, what he should eat, what he shouldn't eat. Like he was throwing up even after being a Navy SEAL and like being put through Hell Week. He still ended up having like still not knowing what he should do. His mom and his wife were there. And they they were like, "What are you doing? Like your legs are broken. You're leaking blood out of your kidneys." Like, and he's still running. He's like, "I gotta keep running." And then he like threw up and passed out. You know what I mean? Like, and he woke up in the hospital. Like, it was one of those things. Like, and then he still did more. He kept doing more. He still does more. Yeah. Terrell. There's a guy, Sean Luttrell. He's from like Lone Survivor. Okay. He was the guy from Afghanistan.
Oh, Marcus Luttrell.
Marcus Luttrell. Thank you. He references Goggins all the time. He's like, Goggins calls me out of the blue and just like, "Hey man, you getting hard?" Like, just like, because he's you could tell he's bench pressing or whatever.
Yeah.
I heard a podcast with him on it. It was great.
But it's your point is it's such a minute majority of people that could actually do something like that and have that passion and drive to do something. And you see that in sports or even in the military or even just in careers. Certain people are just meant to do it and they know it, and
so that's the distinction between men and women. But then if you were to get into like the military's The military's a killing force. Like, they're there to kill the bad guys. They're not there to be like, hey, how many lesbians do we have? How many Latinos? How many people that are African American? How many? You know what I mean? Like, they're not there to try to like be a diverse grocery cart of like everything we've got in the store.
Yeah.
Like they're there to, because people have gone through the tests, the rigmarole, and became the best of the best, and they were the best in their skill set, right? Like, so the guy that's out in the front lines, that's a really good, like is a good soldier, is not running a drone.
Sure.
The guy that's running, the guy that's or the gal or whoever that's is a really good marksman, is a sniper. Like, those are the, you know what I mean? You don't say, well, listen, this guy was a better sniper, but he's not black, so we can't pick him, or he has a wife, and we're looking for more LGBTQ candidates.
Right.
Like, I think that's really just diminishing the military, and I know people usually get flack for that, but, well, whatever. It's my personal opinion, and this is my channel, and these views do not represent that of my employer.
Sure.
So, and then to get, and real quick, Paul, before you chime in, I just, the diversity amongst workplaces. Like, listen, if somebody's a good candidate, like, nobody's discriminating. Like, I think that should be the goal, is to not, if you're not discriminating, which legal discrimination has been outlawed since the 1960s. So, I mean, and then affirmative action stepped in and actually kind of, I think, stepped over its bounds. Like, essentially now all of a sudden you're like passing up good candidates to, you know what I mean? And now they're just taking affirmative action to a greater stance and saying, well, no, you need to cover all these other categories.
Yeah.
And we're completely disqualifying good applicants because we have too many of one category. And it's like, no, that's not how this should work. We're here to be the best. This is America. Like, as long as you prove yourself, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. I was telling Miley this, but I was also telling June this yesterday. Like, if somebody's got black skin, like, somebody's got orange skin, like, you know what I mean? Like, purple skin, like, whatever color skin they have, like, it's like the color of their eyes. Like, it's interesting. Like, oh, you've got blonde hair with brown eyebrows. Like, that's really interesting. What genetic process? Like, that's where my brain goes. Is like, what genetics had to happen? Like, what part of the world did your ancestors evolve on, where those two things, you know what I mean? Like, that they came together, and you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting, but it's not.
That's what makes them unique,
Right, but it's interesting, but it's not important.
No, it's not the defining feature of what somebody is by how they look. And I think the military tries to naturally weed out individualism. That's what I was going to chime in. Was this, the military tries to weed out the individual, and from day one in boot camp, they force you to become part of a team.
Right, team first.
Right.
You are the body first, and then, like, it's different than what most citizens view themselves. Right, they're self-centered. Citizens should be self-centered. I mean, it's, freedom of speech, things like that.
Sure.
You're worried about yourself. You're striving for the American dream, and then, you know what I mean. Then eventually you build a family, you become less self-centered, and you become more altruistic, especially as you get older or you make more money, things like that. But in the military, it's a different purpose. You're there to maim and kill the bad guys. Like, and so to just try to, like, oh, everybody's important, and, like, yeah, I mean, what is this? What are we're turning into a kindergarten class.
Yeah.
So they're about to open up public comment. We went on a tangent there, but
But it kind of goes hand in hand probably with what's to transpire. And
oh, definitely. Yeah, we probably touched on some stuff. So they're gonna. So he's opening up. So they open up public comment, but they ask all the aldermen to make a comment. So they're talking about Kathy Hochul, and they're excited to work with her in the future. And I don't know, like, she's Cuomo's protege. I've met her a couple times, and I love how they say party politics doesn't mean anything. I think John says this in the next speech when he gives it. And it's great to have a female governor. Like, well, that's great. Like, okay, a box you're checking. I mean, like, really, like, it's
I'd say it's the culmination of a lot of other hard people's work, but it doesn't mean she's going to be great until she can prove that she's a good governor.
Right.
She shouldn't be considered a great governor just because she's a female.
Right. If she is, good for her.
I hope she does. But
anything's better than Cuomo, but he says he says she's from Western New York, and okay, well that's a good thing that she's from Western New York, and maybe she won't forget about us like Cuomo did. But he says like, oh, and party politics aside, like she's very party politics. When we won the DRI grant, like all the Republicans were set in the back, and all the Democrats had seats in the front. So you had Linda Witt and everybody else brought right to the front. And then she made the announcement, and like the photo ops were with like no Republicans, and it's like, okay, you know what I mean? Like I get that it's your party that is in office right now, but like this is our community, so like take a picture of all of our candidates. You know what I mean? Like all of our representatives.
Yeah.
And then Dave's just said something. Oh. So Dave was checking on roads because Dave cares about roads a lot. Dave kind of came in and was like, "I hate roundabouts." Like, Dave, we haven't talked about the council hasn't talked about roundabouts. Like even Facebook calmed down about roundabouts, and like Dave was just like, "Well, you know what? I still hate the round. Any opportunity, it's like a Facebook comment." And I'm like, Jesus.
Are they plans more in the future? Or?
They're putting in 2 more. They're putting in one by East State Street and South and North and Berry, the intersection there. And they're putting in one on West Green Street,
okay.
Which is what I've always been saying anyways.
Sure.
Like West Green Street, they have a lot of crime and drugs, and what we need to do to get them out of there is, I was like, it's like one of those old Polish jokes. Drug dealers can only sell drugs at a corner. You put in a circle, they can't sell drugs. So...
Now they're opening it to the public.
Now they open it to the public. And here comes Ty Malone, and we might have to pause this. And the reason I'm mentioning names is because he mentions the names in the public comment. We're reviewing a public record here, so. So he's talking about how the mayor. He's saying the mayor's playing political games, and how he lied to the mayor. The mayor lied to him. Yeah. So what he's referring to is the council. The council didn't want to have to set. The council didn't want to be. They had to set up a police reform committee, not a police oversight committee. The police oversight committee is what Ty and his cousin, I think cousin, I don't know how him and Danny are related, but Daniel Gayton will be up next, and him and Danny are pushing hard for this, along with Alderman Vernon Robinson. They really want a police review committee, a police oversight board.
Okay.
Which they feel should have the process of, like if a cop does something, or if somebody files a complaint, you just say, hey, this cop was looking dirty at my wife. Like all of a sudden you could file the complaint with them, and they would actually be able to have punitive damages against the police. That's what they're looking for. They'd be able to hire and fire the cops. And so essentially I presented a whole bunch of documentation to the city on this, that the police would have. First off, you wouldn't and I know some of the cops have even mentioned this, and the mayor has mentioned it too, that you're not going to be able to get something like this through the negotiations for the union.
Right.
You're not going to get them in. They're not going to approve it, and you're going to be in arbitration for years.
So what happens if something does happen? What's the normal procedures? Or
they would
some kind of,
the most recent thing that happened, where there was the cop opened fire on a vehicle that was, I believe, charging at him. The police chief didn't touch it. Essentially, the entire police force just forwarded it to the state police.
And the officer was put on some kind of temporary leave, I'm sure.
He was put on leave until the investigation was over. The state troopers investigated it, and and I don't know how the procedure goes, if it's the district attorney, or no, she doesn't even handle it either. She would, if it went to a district attorney, they would forward it. She would forward it to a different attorney. she would forward it to a different public defender. At which point, or not public defender, a district attorney. And so then from there they take it and they but it never got to them because the state troopers reviewed it, and that's how it ended. What happens is that like the public is saying, the public. When I say the public, I mean the people that show up to public comment, which is 2 to 3 people who hate the police, and so they show up and they don't. They're not satisfied. They're like, no, we want blood. We want this cop in jail forever, yada yada, and and it's easy to see how easy it is to jump on a bandwagon and stuff like that. But I mean, the police did an investigation.
Right.
None of these state trooper boys knew this cop. You know what I mean? And like the state trooper is under high scrutiny. Is like under such high rigor to make sure that they're following ethical standards and things like that. So that should be all that suffices. If they found that he was like guilty of something, it would have forwarded to the district attorney. The district attorney would have said, nope, I'm not touching it. I deal with these cops in our area, and then she would have forwarded it to a different county district attorney, or Buffalo or something like that, or a higher circuit court.
Sure.
And then from there, like the judges would probably do the same thing. They'd move it out of our area entirely so they can get a fair impartiality, right? Like one of the reasons why, like I just like that whole post, the Justice for Chauvin thing. I was just like, hey, listen, this is America. Like there should be justice. You should sequester a jury. You should not have it in the location where the entire sector of the city is shut down and controlled by like rioters. Currently, up until that, you know what I mean? And then you got like that whole...
Well, especially if it's on the news every night and you have, potential jurors that are going to be called and they're already seeing evidence, presented.
Or people in the jury going, like, you had Maxine Waters out there going, if you don't find justice in the court system, we'll make justice. Well, these people live in that area. Sure. So they're like, if we don't find justice, so you're saying, like, well, they're listening to the facts. People on the news aren't listening to the facts. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, if we don't find justice, what she means by that is if you don't find the verdict that we want you to find, we're going to burn your city down. That's how I took it. And if I were a juror in that city, I'd be like, listen, I've had enough of my stores in my town burnt down. I had enough of my businesses. I had enough of our homes burnt down. I don't want to deal with it. And I'll vote whatever way. And so, like, I think there's going to be a mistrial on that. It just...
Whether you retrial somewhere else,
right? Whether you agree with the guy or not, or whatever side you landed on with the whole incident with Chauvin, the trial has to be fair. It can't be impartial, or it has to be impartial. It can't be it can't be influenced by outside sources, congresswomen and men coming there and the news media. It just, I don't know. So we went on another tangent again. So Ty's talking about this. Ty doesn't want. He wants. So the council said that they were going to set up a police reform committee. And essentially it was from the governor's office. They were going to withhold our funding if we didn't review our police procedures. And we reviewed a lot of our police procedures. We're already ahead of the curve. We've got a lot of stuff already covered in our policies. Our policies are already ahead of the curve. They're there. They're already what they're expecting. They're satisfactory. Like the chokes have been limited, and we were just preempting New York State laws anyways.
Sure.
New York State changes it, and then so then like they said, okay, well we need community input. We've got other members of the community. I was on that committee, and it was one of those things like But
they feel that the mayor made false promises that he hasn't kept. Or...
He's saying he's playing political games. Everything that goes on uptown is political games. Usually they're not much. It's just like, hey, this is my opinion. This is your opinion. I won elected office, so my opinion is going to rule over the common person who you know what I mean? Like they'll mention up here in a couple minutes, like we the people. There's 2 people in front of us, and as far as I know, every person I talk to in Holy Hand, they're for the police and not against them.
Sure.
The people that show up to the council meetings are against them, and so this is where the silent majority is not heard.
Right.
So they brought it to that committee. That committee made recommendations. It sent it to the council. At which point, there was one item on that list that the council wanted some clarification on, and they said, what are the structure, the bones of this police oversight committee? So they sent it back to that committee that got created, the police reform committee, which was it's a mayoral appointment committee. The mayor runs it, and then there's people in that committee. There was 2 aldermen. One was me, and then the other one was Vernon Robinson. And then there was like the police chief sits on it. A lot of people stepped out once the mandate to New York State got completed. They were like, listen, they don't have the time to put into this. So the people that really wanted the police reform committee were like the only people that were left on the committee, except for like, the city hierarchy of people that should have been on there, like the police chief, the mayor, you know what I mean? And then it was like, but everybody else who was fighting against the police reform committee resigned because they didn't want the headache. A lot of them were being bullied by this gentleman here and other people. They were bullied. They some of them were, they watched what happened to me. I said, listen, Olean is not a racist place. I said, it's not like we have Klansmen standing at the gates of Olean shooing off minorities. It's like a scarecrow warding them off. And people just said, what? He said the word Klansman. Bah, trigger warning. And everybody started collapsing and coming unglued. And it's like, no, that's not what happened. What happened was, I said those words, they came unglued, and then they all attacked me. There was newspaper articles, there's Facebook posts, the mayor was catching grief. Tons of people were coming out saying Kevin Doherty's a racist. Somebody passed around a meme of me wearing a Klan suit at the gates of Olean. It says, welcome to Olean. It was me holding wearing a Klan suit. And so, like, people saw that happen. They're like, oh my God, Kev, they jumped down your throat. And people called me afterwards going, I don't want that to happen to me. And they started defending the police in those meetings, and they watched the tone of those meetings change, and people started getting aggressive. And that's when a lot of people backed out of those meetings. So now you're left with a group of people that get to design the police oversight committee that don't like the police and want the police to pay for whatever Hollywood mistransgressions that were there. Like, oh, this cop was looking at me. Maybe it's because you walk into the store with your hands in your pockets. Like, I don't know how your mannerisms are. No, it's because I'm black, or it's because I'm overweight, or I've got tattoos, or whatever it happens to be. I wear colors that are vibrant, which also happens to be gang colors. Like, well, then maybe that's I don't think it was the color of your skin, but it's one of those things. So Ty goes into, he wasted all of our time. You guys made a submission to the council. And then the council said, listen, we're making laws. You've given us your recommendations. We're going forward and making them. We are making the best police practices. What a public... He said, okay, so he...
I mean, what's he referring to public safety? I mean,
he's saying it's a public safety issue. Our cops are amazing. So, yeah. It would be a public safety issue if we pass this. It would be a public safety issue because it's going to make cops afraid that anybody that they interact with, even if you get a crazy person, right? You get somebody's crazy and you have to talk them down. And then all of a sudden they just have to say, like, this cop harassed me, and then this board would come in and potentially fine them, dock them, pay, fire them. And who wants that extra? As long as they know that in a court of law, they didn't do anything wrong, then a cop's going to do their job.
Sure. And
they're going to do their job well. And sometimes they have to get pushy because they're enforcing the law. And a lot of times they're not dealing with the most sane people. But he's treating it like it's a public safety issue because these cops are out there shooting people. And
and like you're saying, there is a procedure that you go through. I mean, it may not be to the exact criteria that he wants, but there's also laws that protect the law enforcement from people that are
they want to get rid of that in New
York
York State.
Right.
What is it? The immunity? Was it privileged immunity or
like
not privileged immunity? That's a bad word. It has to do with their employment. Like,
right.
You put your hands on somebody to restrain them, and they have a heart attack. Like, you don't get charged for murder because the guy, or even just negligent homicide because the guy had a heart attack. You know, like there's a lot of good Samaritan laws out there. You try to save a person from a burning car and you break their arm trying to get them out, and they sue you for medical expenses for their broken arm. Like, motherfucker, like they, like, so. Oh, it's just hilarious. Nothing gets done. They get stuff done. So he's not counting the times the mayor's lied to him, but I've listened to those meetings. So he said, "You've lied to me, Mayor. I have the proof. I have the proof." And he goes, "I'll show you the proof." And then I wrote it down on a Post-it note, and I emailed the mayor, and I was like, "Did he ever show you the proof?" He goes, "No." And so he says he has proof, and it's just accusations and lies. Mrs.?
Yeah, sorry.
Paul's a good husband. So... I can't. They have the best police practices available. He's saying they won't give them the police practices. They have them. They have them. The best practice, I think this is... We're taking heat to all that's going on. There's people in the community that's not scared to stand up. That's great. Stand up. Stand up for what you want, but it doesn't mean that that's the best thing.
Right.
And these guys have to make the decision as the council. I still think it's ridiculous that they bullied every one of those, most of those people out of there. Oh, and then he gets stuck on a tangent. Okay, so now he's on a tangent. So there was a grant from 3 weeks ago that they said, "Hey, do you we're getting the new developer over at the mall, so that the mall doesn't sit vacant and empty and have to be torn down because of no maintenance, because nobody's making any money with it, so they're just like, just let it fall to the ground, and then we have a big vacant hole in the center of our city." Community development worked with the state and the federal government to find grant funding to help this building get revitalized and reused with the new developer, and it was a great thing. And now he's referencing the fact that, like, why don't we give more to other smaller downtown businesses instead of $1 million developer? Because guess what? It takes more than $1 million to renovate.
Yeah, quite a bit actually.
And now he's talking about how, like, now part of that building is going to be for senior housing, and we're trying to revitalize Olean to being to young families. John Crawford always says that. So that doesn't mean that that's the mission statement of the city, because John Crawford pushes that. So we do have seniors in our city, and we don't have a lot of... I mean, we have a lot of senior living, but we also have a high percentage of seniors.
Right. And a lot of them live in housing that just isn't...
It doesn't accommodate them. People don't understand that. Like, you want to live in a 4-bedroom house, and then all of a sudden your kids grow up and move away, and now you can't get off the first floor because you got arthritis. And...
Yep.
So he does bring up a good point here. Now that the city should bring up their issues with Allegheny and their water usage. He's bringing that up. We have an archaic agreement that needs to be addressed, and that has to come to head, and it takes somebody with testicular fortitude or ovarian fortitude to bring that forward. So it's the state of New York State that is driving Olean the way it is. It's the state of the United States that drove Dresser Rand back to their homeland of Siemens, to Germany.
Right.
Why would they pay out of? They're paying U.S. taxes, and then when they get home, they're paying taxes to their country as well, and their country is a high tax place.
Sure.
So
if all of a sudden the United States says we're graduating from oil, it's like, why would they put extra money into something that the country is actively trying to close down.
Right. Oh, yeah, he's yelling at Paul Gonzalez. Paul likes to look at his phone a lot, and Paul also likes to roll his eyes at people like Ty and stuff like that. So that's Paul. So, but whatever. You can have your opinion on Paul, but that is Paul. And they were berating an old man that was talking about pot. Don't accept pot as don't legalize it in our city because it's a gateway drug to more drugs and all this other stuff. And they. And then that man was getting a little irate and trying to drop off literature to the council, and they said, "Hey man, your 5 minutes is up. You can give this to us after the meeting." Blah blah blah. Sometimes you gotta corral in your.
Sure. Well, there's rules to going to these meetings, and you can't just go on 6 different tangents and.
Yeah, and especially
not even give any really good
and he's been
ideas. He's just complaining.
He's been talking for 7 minutes and they haven't stopped him, right? Like normally they stop you at 5. Yeah. Like if they don't like what you're saying, or if you're not. So like this is where Ty gets the benefit of the doubt here because he checks the boxes, right? Like he's a pissed off man of color, like so that gives him some credence, right? And they don't want to step on the woke. You know what I mean? They don't want to piss off. They're trying to play favorites. So
it just doesn't sound like he's giving a lot of solutions. It's a lot of you're not doing anything right.
You're not doing right. Like
really
we want solutions.
Giving good feedback and saying he's
They're
saying you're working with the same people over and over again, say with the mall, but and yet it's a new Rochester developer that's willing to put a lot of money from his own capital into the city. And how is that not bringing in new blood to the city, whereas the previous owner hadn't done anything in over a decade? So,
give me 1 second, Paul. Yeah, you keep talking.
I just think that, trying to scare away people that are trying to actually utilize and bring money and talent into the city for something that possibly the city needs, and also trying to alleviate the blight problem, in the downtown area. The city's already put a lot of money, the state's put a lot of money into revitalizing the downtown, and this is just one more aspect to it that, could actually turn things around. It's just, you kind of have to deal with the cards you're dealt rather than saying, oh, you're scaring away all the businesses, and they had no real say in the Dresser decision, from that standpoint. You're saying you want to keep young families in and have, young families and that, but you got to actually be able to pay them.
Right.
You got to actually have more than just a salesmanship, clerk's job. That a former mall that is now closed. It's like, what are your options for putting a new store in there? Are you contacting large major retailers? And it just seems like he's got a whole lot of ideas of what they're not doing, instead of just saying, hey, how about you contact a new firm that you may not have thought of before, and I'll be willing to help.
Right.
That would be something that you could throw in your meeting rather than just critiquing it.
So
I would just be curious as if he has any ideas. Maybe he does.
Yeah, well, right. But so like sometimes you can go up there and bitch, but you don't make a 7.5 minute speech about how the councils do nothings. How about you sit down and work with the council and say, hey, listen, I've got these ideas, and if you don't have ideas, maybe you find people that do. They're elected officials. They're not idea people. They're decision makers. They're representatives. So you come to them with your idea. They represent you and bring your ideas forward or bring your concerns forward. But you don't sit there and just keep berating them on television and on YouTube. And like we're commentators, so we're going to critique. But I mean, that is one of them. Like, people come and bitch at the council, and it's like, why is there world hunger? Like, what? I don't know.
I would almost want to say, well, what are you doing about it in your own area? It's like you can't.
But they'll never say that.
In West California, it's like, what are you doing to help West Olean? To me, that would be more productive than just saying the whole problem is, existing. It's just like, well, maybe you have some solutions that you could do in your own backyard rather than blaming the entire system.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. He's got probably. Then we got to get to Danny. I still respect you, but I don't think we can trust each other. I don't know how you can trust somebody. I don't know how you can respect somebody you don't trust. I guess I could understand that. Like, I guess I could see that stupid. And then he could drop that, and then they just politely say thank you, and then like But that's it. They play cordial and they sit there and they take it, and because that's the thing is like they don't want to get into a back and forth, and they always echo one another. For a little while, he's been following it since the beginning. He's been following the police reform committee. He was one of the people that came right out and said Kevin Doherty's a racist. We need to lynch him. Like. So he's pointing out that the council had it and said, hey, listen, we're going to create something that we can bring in council. So a council can create committees, and the committees from the council can only consist of council members. So there's another kind of committee called a mayoral committee, at which point the mayor can appoint council members to sit on it, as well as anybody he'd like, city employees, community members, whoever. It doesn't matter. He can have whoever he wants sit on it because it's a mayoral committee, but the council committee can only have council members. So so that we didn't have to meet the public, the open meetings law, we ended up turning around and having only 2 aldermen, because if you have 3 or more aldermen in one place at any one time, it's considered a public meeting. At which point you have to advertise and all that other stuff.
Sure.
They still recorded almost all of them, and it was one of those things like, yeah. But so anyways, they forwarded it to the mayoral committee to make the recommendations and have community member input, and then they turned around and had committee. Then they turned around and then they presented it to the council. The council went through and said, we like these proposals. This is the proposal our committee came up with. They forwarded it to the state, and then the council said, we're willing to push this through, except we have an issue on this, this, and this. And they said, send it back to committee, ask them for clarification and some and some structure for this police oversight committee. And then it came back to the council, said, this is what we've got, and they said, okay. Well, we're the one who make the laws, so we'll now review it. And they were like, no, just take it as it is. We presented it to you. We've done the research and the homework. We are now the experts on how this mechanism will work. Well, that's not how the council works. The council wants to now take it, completely understand it before they vote on it. They're not going to let you Nancy Pelosi them. Like, make this Obamacare, right? Like, this is a 2,000-page document. You need to pass it so we can find out what's in it. Like, that's not how shit works.
Sure.
That is lunacy, and we're not going to go through and push it. And then Danny gets into some more stuff coming up, and it's.
And plus, there's legality issues too. It's like
you got to work them out,
right? You actually have to probably check with the city attorneys. You probably have to double check to make sure that it's not conflicting with the union contracts.
City labor attorneys. So
yeah. And working if it was a reform deal, you got to make sure the chief's aware of issues and is willing to. Obviously, make changes, and it could take a long time to actually just get the officers trained in the new criteria that this council has been brought forth, and so
and then
it's not going to happen overnight. And this is when was the last meeting that they actually had for the police reform, meetings and stuff.
Oh, like a month ago.
Oh, really? So
yeah.
I mean, how were they supposed to
2 months ago
implement that many?
They've had, and then they were like all of June and July, like all of July, like the count, like end of June, early July, most of July. The council was all over the place, and traveling and stuff like that. So they didn't have a lot of meetings during those 2 months.
I mean, it just seems like this stuff is going to take a long time, even if it was 100% backed by the city and the council and the mayor and the police chief and the union. It just sounds like it's going to take a long time to implement anything. So it's not like they're dragging their feet as much as just it's the process.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It is a process, and I have a feeling that they've got maybe two councilmen that'll vote for it, and one. And I could probably tell you how it goes down. Like, Linda's going to vote for it because she pretends to be woke. Vernon is all about this committee because he's made it very public that he hates the police department. And then he's going to be the biggest, strongest supporter of it. John Crawford's on the fence. Paul Gonzalez is on the fence. Dave Anastasia will vote for whatever Linda tells him to vote for. And you got Jason Panis who won't vote for it. So, and I bet you the thing gets shot down, especially because of how it's going to pan out. Like the council isn't going to sign up for something that's going to get them sued by the union,
Right.
And that's just where it is. Like, oh, the people want this. Well, that's right. That's great. Like the people can also want us to pave the streets with gold, but we don't have the tax base for that. So,
Especially seeing how most of the council or whoever would be in charge of this oversight committee, it's like, what kind of background do a lot of them have that would kind of allow them to understand some of the procedures or the ramifications if all of a sudden you cut back a lot of the funding for the city and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not saying that they're just underqualified, but it just seems like this is a pretty.
We also don't pay the police contract just went through. I believe they gave the cops a raise, but it's still like we're starting brand new cops out at like $41,000 a year. You want to be a cop in a society that wants to kill cops at $41,000 a year? I wouldn't want to be a goddamn cop.
Well,
I would. I'm crazy. So,
well, especially if they're not getting killed, but for every single arrest or detaining or you're going to be under
vilified.
scrutiny potentially for somebody that is just out to either cause trouble or feels that they were wrong. It would backlog the entire system. I mean,
it would.
How many arrests are happening a year in the city? I mean, it's got to be a couple thousand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even if it's just for a temporary holding.
And now with the Bail Reform Act, that's screwing over our cops.
Yeah.
Like we have one cop dedicated to just getting information to the district attorney in a timely manner for the discovery law. I mean, that's what came through right around the same time as the bail reform. We're not holding anybody unless they're like completely like domestic violence, but like you punch your neighbor, like it's an appearance ticket. Here you go. Sorry, like he didn't punch you with a deadly weapon. Like, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, our cops have a rough time. So wants two proposals. Yeah, he wants two proposals, two different structures on how this thing. We got your proposals. Now they're gonna vote on it. They worked hard. They wanted to discuss it. They said, thank you for your recommendations. We'll review it. And now they're reviewing it. Like, and maybe they don't give a damn. Maybe they're silence. So he's saying maybe you guys don't give a damn. Maybe they're silence. He's going to tell them they need to stand up. Oh, yeah. Bill Aleo during his thing read a letter that Linda Ekstrom wrote about how great the police department is. And he read that during the mayor's whatever the comments from the mayor section.
Yeah, kind of like a correspondence.
Yeah. He was just like, hey, I got a letter from Linda Edstrom, and she said how great the police are, and he's like, I don't think that's appropriate to be talking about how great our cops are. Like, and I got a question about the whole like, is somebody considered a minority because of how they look? Like,
yeah.
if your dad is black and your mom is white, or vice versa, and then you end up looking white, are you not a minority because your dad's black, right? Like, didn't that? Like, I guess I don't understand. Like,
yeah.
I thought it was like genetic code. You know what I mean? Like your heritage that makes you a minority.
Or even just how you could identify. I mean, but. You could identify and not even be it, It's...
Right. So Miley's 13. Her dad's black and her mom is white. And she's had a couple little boyfriends here and there, right? She's 13. They're, holding hands and, talking. Whatever. But, like, what happens when she goes on and she marries a white boy? Right. She has white kids.
Yeah.
Like, well, her kids are going to be, like, 1/4 black. Like, they're going to look white. Like, does that make them less a minority? Or does that make her 3/4? That does make those kids 3/4 of a majority?
Yeah.
Like, they're splitting hairs. It's like, well, today I'm black, but when I go apply it, when I go apply it at this job and they're looking, I want to, because everyone has these stupid stereotypes that like, well, if I'm black, I'm not going to get the job. Like, no, you're probably more likely to get the job because you guys have created a racist system that only picks minorities. So of course you're going to always check the minority box because you always want to benefit yourself. Everybody does. Everyone wants to benefit themselves. But why the hell are people leaving? Yeah, he's talking about the leadership's fault, right?
People left.
Oh, people.
Taxes.
Oh no. Okay, no. He's talking about the committee.
Oh.
You know where it's going? They weren't going to get validated because you were bullying them. Not you, Danny. Well, you probably were too, because you guys were interviewing people on the internet and bullying people. You're bullying people to meet the... They bullied all those people off that committee that actually didn't... that were dissenting from them. They're like, I am a different point of view. And they're like, then get the hell off of here, or we're going to scare you off of here. I was calling Johnny Crawford out. Oi. I can't. Well, you know what? Other people, yeah, but other people didn't hear that. I don't think anybody did that. I don't think anybody told him that's why he left, because it wasn't going to pass. Everything else passed. They're working on the police oversight committee now. It's the biggest piece of controversial legislation in that whole committee that came through. They didn't botch it. They're still working on it.
You know, I'm sure you're going to have people come and go for stuff anyways, for either personal reasons or, you know, if they're not feeling that they're being able to add more to the conversation, I would say you should step down, and maybe other people should step up if, you know, they feel that they can, you know, advance it forward, if that's really the
right
thing that he's complaining about. He just seems like...
Well, he tells them that he needs to stay. Oh, now he's talking about how the police contract had to get passed first. You don't think it was a talking point? Like, I wasn't in the room. I'm not privy to those conversations. I wasn't even when I was an alderman. I wasn't privy to those conversations. That's the mayor does the negotiating. You know what I mean? Like him and the lawyers, they do the negotiating with the different unions, and he goes in. So, you don't think it was a talking point at the police negotiation? There definitely was a conversation. They definitely brought it up and said, "Are you passing this thing? Like, I don't know if it has the votes. Well, if you do, we're not going to support it. Which means if you can't get it in the contract, it ain't going through." I love how he's full of cliches. He just makes he fights on cliches. That's how he fights. See, you want to be leaders, be leaders. You want to step up, step up. They're not hiding behind closed doors. Don't take their silence as that's the other thing. Don't take their silence as not stepping up. Maybe they are stepping up by not saying shit to you, because you're going at them with your teeth showing, telling them that they're not doing what you want. Well, that doesn't mean that it's the best thing. They're leading and decision making, and they're going through. So now he walks away, peace, and he does his little, just cordial. That's the part that gets me the most. If you're going to be a leader, then you should lead. Oh, why? By doing everything that you asked me to do when there's 13,000 other people that live in this city that may not see it the same way you do? Oh, but people on Facebook who don't even live here are supporting Danny.
Yeah.
But let's do that. It just, that part last night, just the public comment just blew me up. I was so hot last night. Not in a good way. I was heated. I was hot under the collar.
And what gets you most about it is just that they're not being fair to the people that are actually trying to do something, or is just what's really
what's grinding my gears about that the most is the fact that they are the fact that they went up there and they're speaking half-truths. They're like, we gave you this, and then they present it to you, and you just looked them in the face, and then all of a sudden it becomes emotional. Like, you looked them in the face, told them to go roughly sit down somewhere. Like, I didn't tell you to roughly sit down somewhere. They said, we'll take it under advisement. This piece of garbage that is not legally binding to our union and would not have made it through the most recent negotiations, nor would have made it past the past negotiations, and probably won't make it through future negotiations. We're not going to take this steaming pile of dump and turn it into law. Like, that's how I feel about the police reform committee, or the police oversight committee. It literally is a way for a smaller group of people to undermine the democratic process. So you can get on this police reform committee, and then you turn around. You get on the police reform committee, and then you and a bunch of people say, oh, we got these complaints, and we're going to vilify that officer because they're not doing what we say. And so now all of a sudden, these cops could actually start, not taking orders, but taking suggestions and being influenced by a smaller group of people that is not elected. These are like volunteers from the community. So you could essentially, and it's not hard to take over a small group. So what happens is instead of electing the different council members who then, approve the mayor's appointment, or the people of the city that elect the mayor to hire and fire people, and deal with the protocols and the memorandums of the day. And then if something happens with a cop, you forward it to the district attorney. It's a crime. It's it's this or it's that. Or maybe it's not a crime. Maybe it's a civil infraction. At which point you would maybe take some internal there's internal protocols that you follow. You go to HR or whatever, and you look through the handbook and say you violated this this city policy. You need to be reprimanded. Yada yada. We already have these procedures in place, and now to create a secondary one that holds more punitive damages and does not have that, like, this is my boss, he's known me forever. Like, I can explain the situation to him, or these are, you know what I mean? Like, you're taking this, like, no, here's a group of people that hate the police. Now you have to do what they say. Well, that small group of people can do more influence to a police department than the elected officials. See what I mean? So now all of a sudden you can completely undermine who the police actually report to by creating something like this. And it's not that, like, good cops wouldn't say, screw you, take me to jail. There would be good cops that do that, but other cops, like any other person, right? Like, if you came into any office, right, and did an experiment like this, you could see how it would turn. You could turn good people into servants to do the bidding of a smaller group of people that have political agendas and want to undermine the system. And it just could go wrong in so many ways. And I don't think that something like, and then for them to come up and do these half-truths and say, oh, well, you did this and you didn't do that, and we the people, all of us, all 2 people in this room, or all 14,000 people in this city? Because it ain't 14,000 people in the city that are supporting this thing. Right. It's probably like 8,000 people in the city. Sorry, on a tangent.
But makes sense. I mean, it makes you, upset when you're only getting a very, very small, group of people that
5-10 people that would be
fired up, and they have the rights to be fired up, and there's definitely things they could continue to put pressure on their elected officials, and if they feel that the system just isn't listening, and I say step up. There's always elections in the city, and that sort of thing. You and I both agree. It's like, hey, if you believe in something, you're passionate, you should pursue it with everything you have.
Which is what they're doing.
Don't just always say you should be doing it and you should be this, but as you always like to refer to with Kennedy, don't always ask what other people or your country can do for you. What can I do for my country?
Right.
It's like,
what can I do for my city? Maybe you guys come up with ideas on how this. Oh, but they want this committee. Well, I don't think this committee is going to pass.
No, especially not this year. It's got a pretty full plate, I'm sure already. We're already almost pretty much halfway through the year. And
I think the council's going to review the different aspects of it, and but I think that they're going to end up turning around and then saying, now what do the lawyers say? And the lawyers say, and that's how it's going to end up.
And it just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of major complaints against any of the officers. If we were having rampant, calls every week, with complaints about officers, using excessive force, or basically looking for handbags or kickbacks for looking the other way, or consistently arresting the same person for pumped up charges, I could see the city really getting behind that person and trying to get these cops out, but it doesn't really seem like we're getting
this
any
isn't,
kind of complaints.
This isn't what American
just
Gangster.
right.
Like this, we don't like. Oh geez, what was it? Russell Crowe. Yeah, Russell Crowe. We don't have to hire Russell Crowe to come in and find all the dirty cops because we don't have any dirty cops. We got cops that are barely hanging in there because their jobs are so stressful. Because even when they go to work, they have a stressful job to begin with, and then the media tells the community members to hate them because they're all racist pigs. And I didn't mean pig in a discriminatory cop manner, but
sure.
That's what the media tells people is that no matter who you are, if you're a white male cop, you're the bad guy. Like maybe there's some bad guys out there, but they're like then there's some real bad guys out there, but they're no bad. We don't have bad cops in this town. We got great cops. We have cops that are just run ragged. And then like to put something like this in front of them, you take a cop who's run ragged, and then you put him in front of this 5-man firing squad and says, if you don't do what we tell you to do, we're gonna fire you. We're gonna take your pension away. We're gonna your kids are gonna be, gonna be on the government dole because you're gonna be in the unemployment line, like, or in prison because we because you look sideways at somebody who was rummaging their hand through their pockets in a frantic manner or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
But I don't know. And then that's really what that grind my gears. And then they go through and they pass a couple things, and it's over, and that's it. I mean, that's the council meeting. They passed the 2 resolutions they had on their docket. I know this was a long one, Paulie.
Yeah, but it's been a while since we've been able to do it.
These, yeah. And next time, what we're gonna do is we got to set some protocols up here. I've got to run a longer cord for our headset. I'll put a splitter in so that you and I can each listen to it. We'll try to figure out the secondary camera thing so we're not up on top of one another. We also have to review the council meetings in advance and make notes.
Sure.
Because I listened to it yesterday and like I had a vague idea of like what I was going to talk about, and I feel like we kind of like listened to the council meeting more than we talked, and we droned on for these poor folks that are listening. So,
and definitely comment back to us. We'd like to, see what your opinions are, and see where we can improve, and just give us some feedback. I mean, if we're just pulling stuff out and we're totally out of line, we're open-minded people, But
we like the dialogue. We like the discussion. I like to have conversations with people, and even though I don't agree, or I do agree, I'll come back and forth with them, and I walk away civil. I always like to say that. I like to have civil conversations with people, and I will get heated. Everybody gets heated. People, I always say to explain it to people too. People are like, "Oh, you got to be happy and smile." It's like, yeah, that's only one aspect of the human spectrum. You need to embrace joy, happiness, anger, hatred, sadness, depression. Like all those things are normal parts of the human being. You can't. You gotta be able to inflect a lot of that stuff, and but try not to be hateful all the time. But you're allowed to be hateful. You can be hateful. You see somebody like trying to steal a kid from their parents, like I'd be hateful.
Sure.
My personal doctor, I'd beat the daylights out of him.
Oh yeah.
I'd go to jail. But anyways, so we're gonna do a little more homework next time so that it's not so bad. We'll try to do these once a week, Paulie.
Yeah, we'll try.
We'll try. Yeah, we'll try to keep them down to 30 minutes. We'll maybe have you use your smartphone, and maybe we can zoom in. Just do a Zoom with you. Yeah. Paul doesn't have a smartphone. Paul has an advanced flip phone. It's a flip phone with a full keyboard. Yeah. What is this? 2006.
Something like that.
All right, gang. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and like Paul said, comment below. Let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what you agree with. Let us know what you hate. And as I always tell you, I love your hate mail. Keep the death threats and the hate mail coming. We love reading them. And they make great horror stories to read the kids at bedtime when they're being bad. So, all right, guys. Peace out. We will see you on the next time.